He was performing a routine flight over the cold sea when he noticed strange movement on a distant, unnamed island. At first, it seemed like a trick of the eye, but the closer he got, the clearer it became. There was someone there, and then he saw something no pilot should ever see. At that moment, a scream escaped him involuntarily, and he realized that this flight would no longer be ordinary, and he could no longer simply fly away as if he had seen nothing. Morning over the sea of Okhotsk. It began calmly. Pale dawn, still water, and cold air, as if the world were holding its breath before something important. The plane cut softly through the sky, leaving behind a barely visible trail. Andrei Volodin sat alone in the cockpit, as he did on most of these flights. His figure was solid, composed, broad shoulders, a thick neck, hands with prominent veins accustomed to strain, a weathered face with sharp cheekbones, and a short beard already starting to gray. His dark eyes were alert, always watchful, like someone who had seen too much and lost too much. Andrei was 43. He was a former paratrooper who had completed 2 tours in the Caucasus and now worked as a pilot in a mixed civil-military observation service. To others, he appeared calm, almost silent, but inside him, a quiet, relentless struggle between discipline and conscience was always ongoing. The flight was routine, a patrol route along the eastern coast of Kamchatka over cold waters, and a chain of unnamed islands, marked on maps only by faint dots. These places were considered dead. No settlements, no official shipping routes, no reason for anyone to be there voluntarily. Andrei knew the route by heart. He had flown it countless times before. Usually, hours in the air were almost meditative. The hum of the engine, the green glow of the instruments, the endless horizon. But it was often in this silence that memories struck him. Today, they came back particularly vividly. He remembered Chechnya, the mountains, the dust, the cries over the radio. One episode he had never told anyone. They had received a weak distress signal, unclear coordinates, poor connection. The commander ordered them not to deviate from the route. Andrei obeyed. 2 days later, they learned that the group had perished. No one blamed him directly, but he had judged himself. Since then, Andrei had learned to listen not only to orders, but also to his inner voice. Sometimes that voice spoke too quietly, sometimes too loudly. He shifted his gaze to the instrument panel. Everything was normal. Pressure stable, fuel sufficient. The weather a rare gift in this region. The sea below the wing looked almost like a mirror, reflecting the pale sky. At that moment, the radar gave a brief, barely noticeable signal. Andrei frowned. The signal was weak, too weak to be certain. It disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, as if someone had blinked far below. Andrei leaned slightly forward, checking the settings. Perhaps interference, perhaps a bird, perhaps nothing. But he noted the coordinates. According to military maps, there should have been absolutely nothing in this square dot. No ships, no temporary bases, not even research stations. Emptiness, pure, silent space. Andrei looked out the window toward the horizon, where the sky met the sea. Vague outlines of islands could be seen low, dark, as if thrown up by time itself. These islands always gave him a strange feeling. They seemed forgotten not only by humans, but by the world itself. He remembered how once his daughter had asked if he was afraid of flying. He had smiled and said that he was only afraid of not being able to help in time. He wasn't sure she understood, but he did. The radar gave a signal again, slightly clearer, slightly more persistent. Damn, Andrei muttered quietly. He checked the time. Fuel was enough. Communication was stable for now. Formally, he had the right to investigate the anomaly, and yet he knew this was no longer just an inspection. Andrei caught himself thinking as if someone below, on this tiny patch of land, were looking up at the sky. They didn't know who he was, didn't know if he would hear them, but still waited. He gripped the controls tighter. At that moment, the decision formed fully, even if he hadn't voiced it aloud. He changed course. The plane obediently turned toward the island. He felt something shift inside, as if he had crossed an invisible line. He didn't yet know what he would see, didn't know what it would lead to, but he knew one thing: if he didn't look, he would never forgive himself. The sea remained calm, the sky indifferent, and only inside Henry grew the sense that this flight would no longer be ordinary. Somewhere ahead, something awaited him, but who, exactly? And why was this island not as empty as it appeared on the maps? The plane descended a few hundred more meters, and the island no longer looked like an abstract blot on the horizon. Now it took shape, texture, life. A white strip of beach stretched along the shore like a wound on the dark land, surrounded by a dense ring of trees. Andrew leaned forward, squinted, and then he saw it. On the sand, almost perfectly aligned with the shoreline, were letters huge, uneven, rough. Stones, logs, wooden debris, and dark seaweed had been arranged into a single word that could be mistaken for nothing else: SOS. Andrew's heart raced as if the plane had suddenly fallen into an air pocket. It was no coincidence, no trick of shadows. It was a message, created by the hands of people tired, desperate, but still alive. He descended further and almost immediately noticed movement. First one figure, then another. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of the trees onto the open sand. They moved awkwardly, as if their bodies had long forgotten how to walk without pain. They waved their hands, but not joyfully. Their gestures were sharp, broken, filled with panic. Andrew immediately understood. This is not a greeting. This is a plea. He turned on the external camera, but barely looked at the screen. His eyes were fixed on the people below. There were 3 of them. First, he noticed a man about 50 years old, tall, but so emaciated he seemed broken in half. His shoulders slumped, collarbones protruding sharply under sun-darkened skin, hair gray, tangled, falling in stiff strands. His face pulled tight with deep wrinkles, as if each one were a mark of the weeks spent here. He waved slowly, each movement an effort. Next to him, a younger man, about 30, short, weary, with a dark beard streaked with white. His eyes were too large for his thin face, feverishly shining. He moved faster than the others, almost jerkily, constantly glancing back at the tree line. The third was a woman. Andrew immediately noticed her. She was painfully thin, tall, with long legs that shook with each step. Her light hair, once probably thick, now hung in tangled, sun-bleached strands. Her skin was sunburned, peeling in places. Her face seemed younger than the men's, but her eyes were old. No joy, only fear and exhaustion. She raised both hands and suddenly fell to her knees. The men rushed to her, supported her, helped her stand, and wave again. They feared that if they stopped moving, the plane would disappear. Andrew flew the plane in a wide arc along the shore and then noticed another detail. At the far end of the beach, closer to the rocky edge, lay something that at first seemed part of the shoreline, but upon closer inspection, Andrew realized it was the hull of a wooden ship, broken and split. The wreck had been thrown onto the sand like a dead animal. The sides were cracked, the mast broken, lying nearby like a snapped bone. No identifying marks. Number name, no flag, just a rough construction, sturdy, clearly meant for long voyages. It was not a pleasure boat nor a fishing vessel. Andrew knew such ships. He had seen them on previous patrols. Homemade, overloaded, often used for illegal transport, smuggling people, sometimes both. The picture slowly but inexorably came together. He looked again at the 3 on the beach. Their gestures were too desperate, their faces too tense. And there was something else: fear. Not just fear of being left behind, but fear of what was behind them. Andrew's gaze involuntarily shifted to the tree line. The forest began abruptly, a dense wall. Tall, dark trunks, intertwined branches, thick shadow under the canopy. And something moved there. He saw it out of the corner of his eye, a vague silhouette. Then another dot fast, too organized to be an animal. Andrew felt his shoulders tense. Someone was in the forest. He circled again. At that moment, the sky began to change. Thick clouds stretched from the west, heavy, gray-blue. The light grew dimmer, colder, and the final episode with the Mi-24. He opened his eyes again. In front of him, a beach, 3 survivors, and the wreckage of a ship. The rain was intensifying, droplets hitting the cockpit, washing away the pale light of dawn and turning the island into a gray, wet mass. Each drop was cold, piercing, and Andrew felt his fingers tighten on the control stick. The Mi-24 descended slowly, the engine's roar overpowering the sound of the rain. Andrew kept the course directly over the beach, making sure not to fly too low, avoiding trees and rocks. Below, the people froze, as if they understood. This was their only chance. He saw the woman leaning on the shoulder of one of the men, her face gaunt, but her eyes full of hope. The wind picked up. The rain turned to a fine drizzle, washing the sand and mixing it with debris. Andrew felt the air around the cockpit become unpredictable, unstable. He had to act quickly. He tried to re-establish radio contact, but interference worsened. The storm seemed to completely block the channel. Andrew circled once more, evaluating a landing. The ground was too uneven, rocks and boulders threatening to damage the landing gear. But leaving the people was not an option. Inside him rose a familiar